Hi, I'm Danny Glover, and you're watching Joburg Today.
Courtney Peters, a 3-year-old girl from a suburb in Cape Town, went missing on May 4th this year. 9 days later, her body was found buried in a shallow grave about 2/3 of a mile from her home. She had been raped twice. Her fate was not as unusual as you would think. In 2016, the United Nations ranked South Africa among the world's 10 most violent nations. The horror of Courtney Peters' death has made the murder of children a subject of discussion and media coverage, at least for now. In response to her death, President Jacob Zuma called the killing of women and children a crisis in the country. Well, to discuss the latest statistics on murder in the country, I have with me an analyst from the Institute of Race Relations, Kerwin Liboni. Welcome. Great to have you with us.
Thanks for the invitation, Noshini.
Now, according to the research that you've been working with, the data from the SAPS, it states that 500,000 South Africans were murdered since 1994, and children have been hard hit. Do we have the latest numbers of child murders in the country? And what more can you tell us about the latest statistics?
Absolutely. During the 2015-16 financial year, about 2,000 kids were killed in South Africa. And if we track that down to the period between 2006 and 2016, it's 20,000 kids who were killed, which makes it an average of 2,000 kids a year that are being killed in South Africa. Someone might look at the stats, if you look at the overall murder rate, to say that the good news is that the murder rate has come down significantly by almost 50% between 1994 and 2016. But still, we remained a country with the highest one of the highest murder rates in the world. According to the last United Nations international comparisons, South Africa stood at number 7 in terms of the highest murder rate after first 6 countries that are predominantly South American, very, very violent countries. And you can see where we stand, that South Africa's murder rate that is 10 times the global average.
That is extremely disturbing. Now, President Jacob Zuma called this a crisis. What does that mean? Whose problem is this? Is this an SAPS problem? How do we deal with this crisis?
Absolutely, it is a crisis because just to give you an indication, while we do have international comparisons for general murder rates, we do not have comparative statistics for child murders, and that precisely because other countries do not have the kind of problem that we have. They do not have the kind of statistics on child murders. They are probably not existent, but that just shows you that South Africa is a very, very violent country, something that has been said almost every time by many, many experts. What it means is that as a society, it's not the SAPS problem. I'll tell you why. The SAPS can only act proactively towards reducing crimes such as armed robberies in terms of increasing police visibility. Mm-hmm. But most of the matters, particularly child matters, are crime categories that occur within what you can call safe environments for victims. It's homes, it's the perpetrators are relatives and friends and people known to families. So it's a very, very difficult crime to detect, mm-hmm. because the police can only act afterwards, after the deed has been done. So it's a very difficult crime for the SAPS to really come to terms with.
Mm-hmm. Are they able to tell what the underlying trends are? If as you've indicated, these crimes are committed by relatives, etc., can they actually pick up which communities and why these communities in particular stand out and why the murder rate is so high in these particular communities and deal with it at a social level, as we've seen in some other parts of the world?
Absolutely. What seems to be, well, there has not been, by the Institute of Race Relations, there has not been a study, a very detailed study of the underlying factors behind these crimes. Mm-hmm. But from anecdotal evidence, what you can see is that the crimes occur in very, very poor communities, and that there's been a breakdown of the family social fabric there. In some instances, you find that some kids do not directly stay with both parents, and that they are there are no childminders there, that when parents are at home. And remember, this ties in with a study that we did in the past about 9 million kids in South Africa not staying with their parents. And added to that, for the colored and African populations, which are the communities affected mostly by this crime, is that you find that 86% for Africans and over 70% for colored people, that they do not stay with both their parents. So you have an instance where the children have got no permanent minders, and as such are very, very vulnerable to such acts.
Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, there was another research which pointed out that Cape Town really stands out when it comes to child murders. And the numbers provided by the SAPS is also not really conclusive numbers because of the infant mortalities that take place that go by unchecked and unreported in instances where mothers give birth and dump their babies in dustbins, leave them out on the streets to die because they cannot take care of these. This is also murder.
Absolutely. The unfortunate part is that the SAPS in such instances, when they come across an abandoned child that was dumped, will label it as an inquest, and as a result, that will not reflect in the number matters. So yes, you are right in the fact that the number matters might be much higher, because that's a matter, obviously, if it's proven as such, that the number of matters of children could be much higher than what is officially reported and given out to the public by the SAPS. And yes, it also the Western Cape, it seems to be most affected by this kind of crime. That could be, to some extent, be tied to drugs, because we know that they are the reason for a lot of social ills in the country.
And gangs are rife there as well.
Absolutely, and they are most prevalent in the Western Cape. Drug abuse is most prevalent in that part of the country. So that might be a huge contributing factor to this kind of crimes that we're discussing today.
We read all about this, but the question again that comes up is what is being done. I think especially if we know that Cape Town is an area where these infant deaths are quite high, where there are crimes being committed that are drug related because gangs are rife in that part of the country. What is being done to address these social ills?
Well, I remember someone from the Department of Social Development came out and said it's really, really unnecessary for mothers to dump their kids. That there are facilities where if you are a young mother, or for instance, or any mother for that matter, that if you cannot take care of your child and you anticipate that you are going to have problems with raising the child, that there are facilities where you can take the child for safety, and that the government will raise the child for you, or maybe find someone else who can do that for you. I think the problem is that there has not been a lot of publicity around these facilities, and that there should be a campaign similar to a campaign on HIV prevention, and sort of to make people aware that if you are in such a quandary, that you don't have to commit a crime, because dumping a baby is a crime. You don't have to commit an extra crime. All you have to do is approach relevant authorities and hand over the child, so that the child can have chances of a bright future.
We spoke about Cape Town, the Western Cape in particular. At one time, Johannesburg was known as the murder capital of the world. What are the crimes, what are the trends of murders here in Johannesburg, and how does that also compare to other parts of the country, other provinces?
Present, the murder rate in Johannesburg is below the national average. The national average is 33 murders. The rate of murder is 33, the entire country. But Johannesburg is around 27. It has come down from previous very high levels. What we are seeing now is that in terms of cities, in terms of provinces, the Eastern Cape has got the highest murder rate amongst provinces in the country. But Cape Town has twice the murder rate of the entire country at around 60 per 100,000 of the population, which brings us back, takes us back to the problem of drugs and gangsterism that are the huge contributors to this high murder rate in that province.
You made a very strong statement in your press release when issuing a statement around this latest statistics coming through from SAPS, where you said South Africa's murder crisis is so serious that some South Africans are more likely to be murdered than the residents of many terror-affected countries.
Absolutely. I mean, and the thing about it is that in terror, countries affected by terror, this is a temporary situation, and that if if there are resolutions in those countries in terms of attacks, that the likelihood of the murder rate coming down is much higher than in South Africa, where this is a normal feature of South African life, which is very, very depressing if you are a South African, that you live in a country where you are twice as likely or as more likely to be murdered than in a place where there's an ongoing war.
Thank you so much for your time today, Cohen.
You're welcome, Nashida.